much more do you want to do? Just press record, right? Remember, if you're trying to do anything creative, just press record, and remember also to press Control S or Command S, which is save. 2022 website being hit by something, methinks. Stinky ginko trees. 2 songs of China. 2 guys, 5 bottles of wine, and a microphone. Yes, news podcast episode is up. And of course, just another day dealing with assisted connection devices. Thursday, October 20th, 2022. I'm Steven Sersky. Folks, hope you're doing well. Yep, it's, again, with these 20th days of 2022, of the 2000s, I guess you got another, 78 years before it changes? Not sure if anyone ever thinks so about this. The only date that actually really matters is usually April 20th. That's the one that people are like, it's so funny. Until then, other than that, like, no one actually ever laughs. I mean, it used to be like when I was a kid, it was like it was October 19th, 1997 or 1999 or 1990, whatever it is I remember before that. Nowadays, it's on the 20th, but that's not such a big deal, is it? Stinky ginkgo trees. This smell. If you're in Beijing, you know the smell I'm talking about. Imagine you're walking down the street and all of a sudden you smell what seems to be fresh dog shit. That. But not just like fresh dog shit in one little blip of an air bubble. It's like for a block. And you're going, what the fuck? Did I get it on my shoes? I wasn't eating it again this morning, was I? No. It's the ginkgo trees. So apparently they're dropping their seeds or whatever they're doing. And it is not a very pleasant smell in the slightest. This smell takes me back to when I first came to China, because there are a few first images of China that I remember quite clearly. And this is back 8 years ago already. 8 years ago. First was I passed out in the cab. Okay, so the very first memory was looking out the plane window and goes, where's the blue sky? So that was the first one. Number two, getting out of the airport, getting to the cab driver who had my name on a card or whatever. He's like, in Chinese. I'm like, oh, and I thought he was a student who had come to pick me up in this very nice black car. No, it turns out he was just one of these black taxi drivers. That's all. Didn't know anything in English, and I didn't know any Chinese at that time. Next, after I passed out and woke up near the university I was going to be working at, I remember seeing a Starbucks and going, okay, good. And then I remember looking out the window and going, wow, there's the sun. I can look at it directly, and it doesn't hurt. So that was first. That was day number one. Fast forward another month, getting used to things and the smog and whatever. Overpowering the smog. So I'm walking down this one street in the university, and it's just this smell, this permeating smell of dog shit. And you're going, where are the dogs that are shitting all over the place? Like, what the hell? Are these kids shitting in the bushes? Like, is that how bad things are here? No. It's the ginkgo trees. And what happens that every October, they, I guess they, what was it? They drop their seeds, or the part of the trees falls off and lands on the ground, and it rot or whatever. I don't know what happens, but it is, although they look pretty, they smell like shit. Like it's the worst smell you can and there's no like, oh, you have to accept it for what it is. No, that's like accepting dog shit. The waft of dog shit for what it is. You're going, oh yes, well, that's my little puppy there. He's pooping all over the place. No, these are ginkgo trees that are causing massive stink fests every October. So this is something that reminds me of my first month in China, basically, are these ginkgo trees. Prior to coming to China, never smelled them before. Never. Like in Canada, we don't have them. It's we have the worst offensive smell in Canada that I can sort of think of are the aphids. We'd have lots of aphids, but that would be in the summer. And usually, like, what would happen is that it would get really smelly, and the streets would be really sticky. And so because they're shitting all over the place, right? And so the city would go spray everything, and it would kill all these bugs, and you'd be cankerworm free and aphid free for about like a day or a week or something like that. Then the cankerworms would come back, and then aphids would slowly return as well. There are aphids here. They just spray them very quickly. They spray it with some very heavy pesticide, I imagine, that kills just about everything, and you don't want to be running outside when they're doing that, even though they wear the same masks for pollution, COVID, and spraying for aphids here on the compound. So I don't know if that's a good thing, a manly thing, or a health issue. I don't know. So yeah, ginkgo trio smell O right now O in the Beijing O. Anyway, my website is being hit by something, and I'm not sure what it is. I don't know if you guys have got these emails before about there's some spam about cryptocurrencies or whatever it is, and they're hitting my contact my page. Sorry, I'm yawning here. I'm sitting I just ate an hour ago, and I've been sitting down, so now I'm crunched over doing this podcast right now. But my website's getting hit because I'm getting these cryptocurrency emails, and I've been getting a lot of them lately. I'm going, okay, what? Normally I don't really care, but if they're coming through my contact page on my website, usually that means that my website is getting hit by some spam attack, and I'm not sure if this is. My website's not unique at all, and I haven't published anything about Ukraine or Russia or anything else, or China or anything. So it's not like there's sort of a free for all sort of hit this keyword sort of thing. It's being raked up or trolled up in some sort of, I don't know, botnet attack on something. I don't know, but it might be because I updated it out last Saturday. I did pull a backup, good thing. But other than that, I can't think of what some of the keywords would be that are getting hit at the moment. So either way, if you can't access the website, it's because there's I'm not sure if it's a DDoS attack or if it's something else that's going on. Either way, the reason I was checking my website, not just for basic maintenance, but also I was trying to post up episode number 34 of my podcast, my big cast. So this is my little cast. This is my little podcast that I post every Monday to Friday, and I post all the archives up on my website, stevensersky.com. And this one is also available on Spotify, Apple, Google, and everything. I also stream this one on YouTube. I try to every day, depending on whether or not the connection's any good. And I say that because over the last week, last month especially, but last week, the connections have not been very good. And I talked about this yesterday about trying to deal with this, circumvent some of these issues, or sort of sidestep, work around, I should say, some of these issues. And sometimes it's possible, sometimes you just kind of got to go do something else until the connection finally opens up. But that being said, spent much of the day after work. I was working today, but I spent much of the day after work working on episode number 34. So finally, and this one's a bit of a long one. So, and as usual, there's always sort of, there is some anxiety in publishing these things because I'm always kind of wondering, is this the version that it could be, that it should be, that whatever. This one was a little bit special because it was actually the first time I think I've drank during a podcast in a very long time, and I only did it because it's with a guy that I've known over the last couple of years, and he's leaving, and so it wasn't just a podcast. It was sort of like a last get together before we don't know when we will see each other again. So that's kind of what this podcast is like. And we go on for quite a while. I actually had to edit this one a little bit because there were some things that some parts where I'm like, I don't know if we're gonna do. No, not just yet. So this one is slightly edited, not entirely, but I left most of it still going. And matter of fact, if you listen to it, you'll probably go, what parts did he edit? Because this thing is insane. It does go on. I'm not going to tell you the full duration because I don't want to put you off. But let's just say it's the second longest podcast recording I've done. And even though there's been other ones that have come close, this one was very long because, again, it was like, we're having a couple bottles of wine. We don't know when we're going to meet each other again. We're not sure if our paths are ever going to cross in person. Now, on WeChat and other places, yeah, sure, great. But in terms of seeing someone again, especially an expat, it's you just never know whether or not it's actually going to happen. So I can't. I don't even like saying this, but I can't count the number of times that that I've shaken hands with someone and said, okay, well, see you next time, see you around, bye, whatever, and then you hear through the grapevine they've passed away, or that they're over here or something else, or no one's been arrested. Okay, so I don't know any criminals as far as I know, but I there have been people who expats that I've crossed paths with before, and they're no longer with us. Now, I don't mean to throw water on this parade here, but that's just sort of my approach towards this podcast recording. So if you are listening to it going, Steve, what the hell are you doing? I mean, you dropped the ball on this one. I think understanding that context, which I know no one else is going to hear, unless you're listening to this podcast right now, this daily audio blog, this audio digest, you probably won't get that same context going into it. And that I'm fine with that because I think the podcast stands on its own. I just want you to know this is your little background information about what was going on a couple weeks ago when we recorded it. So episode number 34 was recorded on Saturday, October 1st, 2022, and it was with my former colleague here, Octavio Araújo. Now, that name might perk some ears up in the circles that we know, because he was a very congenial guy when he was here. He's now back in the States. He's moved back to Los Angeles, where he is going to begin studying a law degree very shortly. And this episode that runs a couple hours, a few hours, we talk about the whole sort of genesis of his idea of coming to China many years ago, what sort of inspired him to not just come over, but to stay for so long, because he's been here 13, 14 years as well. Some of the things that he's learned, and some of the other lessons that, or some of the takeaways that he has from it, and some of the advice that he would give to other people who have, if they're going to come to China, if they're thinking about coming to China. So stay tuned. At the end of today's episode, I have a clip from that podcast, and it's a couple minutes or so. So I know some of the people who are listening to this, they might be like, I don't know if I want to invest the time, but I'll leave that clip up there. You can judge whether or not you want to invest the time to listen. Of course, with this one, I think it is going to be a multi-parter if you are working out or anything like that. Other than that, I honestly, you can hear how the conversation goes throughout the whole duration of it. I laugh now, but I was actually sent him another message saying, it'd actually be nice to almost redo it. Not so much, I don't want to redo it because I don't think we didn't cover a lot of stuff. I think we covered a lot of things, but I think we could do another episode later on, a few months later, after he's been in the United States as his home now, in contrast to like had he visited the United States and come back to China, which is what his home was for the last 13, 14 years. So again, I mean, it's I think you're going to get something from it, absolutely, especially since he's published books, he's traveled around China, he's lived in a few different cities as well, and he's also tried his hand at learning Mandarin Chinese, and I don't think he was as successful as he wanted to be, but I'll let him explain that in the podcast. So episode number 34 of my podcast, the big podcast, Stephen Sersky podcast, up. It's not on my website because it's getting hit right now, but you can go to Spotify, Anchor.fm, Google, Apple, Amazon. It's all up there for you to stream. All right, so with that, I mean, Hope you guys enjoy that. The last little thing one little thing we were talking in this uh, podcast actually that we just recorded and I just published here gets me thinking about some of the little things that you might take away from being wherever you are in China, and specifically, there's two things that have constantly both put me in China and taken me back to my youth and back to Canada and back to the Western media, Western culture, Western music. And I'm going to say these names. How should I put this? Okay, what do Kwai Di Yen, delivery drivers, and these motorcycle, no, they're rickshaw driver motors have in common? What do they sound like to you? It's not so much what they have in common. So Kwai guys, the delivery guys here in Beijing, and those tricycle, they're not tricycle, it's those the three wheelers with the wagon on the back, not for people but for stuff. And that sound that they make? I'm specifically thinking, what types of sounds are associated with these people? Right? That's the Kwai guy. What does that remind of you? Maybe you don't have the same musical taste as I do, but that dun 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 reminds me of one song. And that, what do you call them? The rickshaw? The rickshaw thingy outside, the tricycle. What is that? That Metallica, not Metallica. No, I'm not going that way. But that wind up, the metallic wind up, up the street, and you hear it because they can accelerate. When they accelerate from a standstill to full bore, what does it sound like? Well, I'll tell you. Raining Blood by Slayer. So every time these Kwai guys come in, they always knock 3 times. That's every time. We're talking during work, out of work, all over work, no matter if it's 7 o'clock in the morning. Awaiting the hour of reprisal, your God, sort of thing, right? So, I mean, that's what I hear. And for those rickshaw guys, who else but Guns N' Roses? Welcome to the Jungle, Guns N' Roses. Now, I know if you're in Beijing, you're going to listen to these two things. Oh, that's right. That's what it is. I'm telling you. Well, next time the Kwai guys knock on anybody's door, it doesn't have to be your door. Actually, it's better if it's not your door. It's not Starling, but you'll hear it. And now go find Slayer, Raining Blood, and then find Guns N' Roses, Welcome to the Jungle. And those two, you'll I hope you hear it, or call me crazy. Now, the reason why, like this Welcome to the Jungle one, actually, there's the reason why it sort of is so constant in my mind is because at around 5:30, 6 o'clock, somewhere around there, the San Yuan Niu Nai guy, so it's this fresh milk guy that drives around the compound, around the neighborhood in this little motorized rickshaw thingy, and it when he accelerates, it sounds like the opening guitar riff, not the da 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 da. It's the long guitar chord that Slash plays during at the intro of Welcome to the Jungle, and every time he accelerates, it's the same sound. So you can imagine, and I hear this all the time going up the street from the red light to the next green light or the next red light, whatever. It says Welcome to the Jungle and Rain Blood every day. So this has constantly kept me sort of, can I say grounded, or at least aware of some of the musicality that's around here that brings me back to my youth. And not being here sort of thing. It's for all the craziness that being an expat can be, and all the little things like what can you say about China? Well, that would be one of them, to tell you the truth. It really would. But if I can get a recording of these, because it's very difficult to find, like to jump on the recording box when you hear it happening. But if you're in Beijing, quiety guys knock, dun dun dun, and that rickshaw guy goes by, have a listen, and then find out there's two songs: "Welcome to the Jungle" by Guns N' Roses and "Raining Blood" by Slayer. Okay, with that, folks, I'm going to leave it there. Show notes, tracks, and vids up on my website, stevensersky.com. And of course, stay tuned, because right now I've got a clip for you from episode number 34 of my big podcast with Octavio Araújo. Here it is. Thanks for listening, folks. We'll talk again. Bye-bye.